If you want to hear more of Careful Study, make sure to subscribe and ding that bell to be notified when we post.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Cram Session with Steve-O. Today we're going to be going over another deck list and incorporate some ideas and go over some concepts, some core concepts of the game. Today's theory and idea is what I will refer to as pre-existing or already present threats, damage sources, etc. And how we can use those to push more damage, be a little bit more efficient with our plays, and, kind of understand the core fundamentals of that compared to what is, I would call, not pre-existing damage. This would be instance-based damage, or, sorry, not instance-based, instant damage, or single damage. So, with the AMB Alter that came out, two cards that really stood out to me the most was this guy right here, Polearm Steed, and this card right here, Huazhong, if I'm mispronouncing that, sorry, Huazhong Insurgent's Fang. These are two AMB Alter cards. I felt like they were the most impactful out of the set of, I think, like 15 cards that got released, mostly because they really push and help Jin allies. One of the things that Lorraine had going for her as the de facto ally champion is her on-enter was just, you can't compete with it. Her on-enter grabbing to a sword, and obviously now with the Looking Glass being able to access a free 2/2 sword, pretty good, and it's very hard to top that. With that being said, though, what is also really good is Jin's inherited ability, which allows him to give an ally, human ally or horse ally, you control +1 attack for the turn. That's pretty big, but for the turn, whenever you attack with a polearm attack or a polearm weapon. One of Jin's struggle points was, I have to take a turn off to materialize a polearm. Well, now with this horse, this is effectively a 3/3 for 3, if you think about it. You pay 3, on enter, materialize a polearm. You swing with Jin for 1, buff the horse for 1, swing the horse for 2. That's a 3/3 for 3. And on top of that, you still get to keep the polearm with durability. So this card really stood out to me for that reason. And then this card really stood out to me because Vigor, cool, that's fine, whatever. But the big thing is the polearm attack cards that you activate enter an intent with +2. The discarding a polearm to prevent some damage is definitely nice, but I don't think it's like a make or break. Like, you're definitely playing this because you want your polearm attack cards to come in with +2, and we have a couple of those, but we'll go into them. So that's the main reason I think those cards are really the only standouts in AMB Alter. I don't think anything else is really, I think Magnificent Banquet might be one card that people are fawning over for Terra Kongming, but at the end of the day, I think once the dust settles, this will be one of the not premier, but it will start to contest these other ally lists as one of the better lists that you could be running, just because of how much damage it can output and do out of nowhere, and is not just your simple Wind Wake Up allies. So let's go over the list. This is a really rough draft. Please keep in mind, one, I am not an ally player, full disclosure. I do know how to play allies. I just don't prefer playing them. So there may be some nuances in card choices that other ally players are looking at and going, what the heck? That's why. It's definitely just because I don't sit there and play allies all day, like a certain New York resident that I know of that may or may not be on Team Main Deck, JC. But anyway, so let's go through this material deck. You'll notice there are 14 cards here. That is because I'm indecisive and I don't know what I want to cut. We got Spirit of Wind, Jin, and like I said, Jin's inherited ability is all that we want to keep using and abusing here, baby. Backup Charger because it's Backup Charger. Beast Bondiers, this is a cute tech because when you play Brisk Wind Trotter, the on-enter will treat it as if you're level 2, so you do get 2 separate buff counter on-enters, which is really nice. If anything, I might cut this card just because Brisk's only at 2. Sensor, it's Sensor, you kind of need to do it. Enfeebling Orb, I don't know how important it's going to be in this deck, but Enfeebling Orb's like low-key kind of crazy. I think on some of the previous podcasts we talked about, I think I know in private I have mentioned multiple times to other players, not just on Main Deck's team, how crazy Enfeebling Orb is. I know Caben took Enfeebling Orb in Fractals at Ascent London. When we were playtesting maybe like a few weeks ago, he was just coming back from his Riftbound stint, and I was telling him about this card. This card is insane, and I'm sure that once he started playing with it, he realized too why everyone was going crazy about it. Executioner Spear, it's a polearm. We really only care the fact that we have polearm weapons. I'm gonna be real, there's not many good polearm weapons. I think Waji's like the only one. So we're kind of limited with what we have, but the reason we might want this one more than the others is because of the on-kill. We don't necessarily need to attack enemy champions' faces with Jhin all the time. Sometimes we might utilize this on-kill just to trigger Jin's inherited ability +1. So I think in terms of polearm, like hierarchy, Hwaji's number one for sure. And then Executioner Spear, believe it or not, I think might actually be at least second or third. So that's why we'll run that. Grand Crusader's Ring, we are not going to play with Inert Sword. We want polearms. So we really kind of can't use the Looking Glass because there is no inverted polearm. You know, there's no Astra or Umbra distortion polearm yet. Maybe in RDO we'll get one. It's like instead of like Heavens something or whatever, it's something from the Abyss. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. So we'll run GCR. Hwaji, best polearm, bar none, easy. Nullifying Lantern, it's meta hate. Smoke Bombs, sometimes you got to get around some taunters and whatnot. Tariff Ring, Purifying Thurible because it's effectively backup charger, and Sundering Moon. I put this in here because we really don't have better options than polearms, and you know what? If we can materialize this one and it does get the +1 attack, sure. You know, nothing bad about that. Also, for what it's worth, you can keep bouncing it back in those really grindy games, so maybe it comes up. So that's kind of the material deck. We have a lot of weapons, some meta hate, just generic stuff for allies. And now let's dig into the main board. So one of the things that you might notice right away is there's a lot of humans. This is more akin to like OG human tribal ally lists because Jhin can only give the buff to a human ally or horse, which means automatons do not enter. Some automatons like Shimmercloak Assassin is still really good, but we really need allies that we can buff with their attack to really utilize that Jhin passive. Dream Fairy is definitely an exception to this, but Dream Fairy is necessary because of the current meta. So you will have to take the L on that one. So let's just do a quick rundown here. We've got 3 Bladed Rifts here, level 1 True Sight. It is our Rose replacement because Rose is a automaton, and obviously True Sight is really good. 4 of Spades, this is a replacement ally. This is effectively a beefier Windmill Engineer that does cost a little bit more to replace itself. Hwa, which, like I said, really good. We like those polearm intents. Leading Charge, this card is really good. Unique Warrior Ally, this card costs 2 less, and it has Floating Memory, and it's a 4 attack base. If you have a unique ally out, this is a 2 cost attack that deals 4. That is really good efficiency. That is really good efficiency for damage. And on top of that, it has floating. So you can imagine if we have, Hwa out and we play this attack card, we're going to be swinging for 6. So that's pretty good. Lurking Assailant, good human. Definitely one of the better turn 1 plays we can play. So he has stealth. Polearm Steed, like I said, it's Beseech on wheels, or on hooves, I guess. Sunsei Weapon Master. We'll go a little bit more in detail about him, but similar reasons to why previous ally lists ran him. Definitely want that durability and damage. Topsy, we do run enough Norm that I think Topsy is worth running here. Being able to discard your opponent's hand and banish their float when you're playing against level 3 strategies is always good. And it is a really I can't stress this enough. Topsy Decree is so good against Fire Aggro Diana. If you play a Topsy Decree when they try to target you with one of their arrows, if you play a Topsy Decree, Spell Shroud yourself, and make them discard a card, the arrow that is on the stack will fizzle. It will not load into the bow. They lose a card, and on top of that, you have Spell Shroud for the rest of the turn, meaning they can't load the bow anymore. So when they try their prereq shenanigans, and they go hands down to play the one arrow left in their hand before they recollect, you slam down that Topsy, you imbue that son of a gun, and you say, pitch one, and piss off, I guess. Turbocharge. We have backup charger. I don't know if this is necessary for card draw. Really depends. This card, I liked this card when this card came out. I think it's going to see more play here in this human tribal, and I'll get into a little bit reasons of why. But intercept and just weapons, we get +1. Just Hwaji. We really want to buff Hwaji here. Brisk Wind Trotter, again, kind of trying it out. You know, I like the idea of buffing our units a little bit. Sometimes it breaks thresholds, like getting over a Calming Breeze or getting over a Resolute Stand. Displace. Displace kind of is in a weird spot where it's in and out in some lists. I think Displace is really good. I think people are sleeping on this card. This card has been insane since FTC. It's just not enough people, I think, really appreciate the value that Displace gives you. Dream Fairy. It's Dream Fairy. Eminent Commander. This card. So this card did not see any play whatsoever, and part of the reason was because it's very hard to hit that 3 damage breakpoint, but when you are playing with Jin and you have, Adept Swordsmith, or Swordmaster, sorry, and a Sunsei, your polearms just have that extra damage. This is not in here, but this was Steel Halberd. This is an alternative too that we can materialize later on. It's a 2 base because of the class bonus. So technically, it's even easier if you run that card to trigger this thing's ability. Turns out paying 2 for a 2/4 is pretty good. We like cheap, really effective, and good statted units. Similarly with Guan Yu, she is a Guardian Human. Again, she is a unique ally. Hwaji is for only unique warrior allies, but her ability, fast activation, similar to Eminent Commander. If you were to replace Guan Yu with this deck, I would replace her with Shangjian. It's an equivalent replacement. It's kind of fine. You have enough uniques that it's okay. Lunge of Evoking Winds. This is part of the reason why I chose Guan Yu and Eminent Commander. Because this card on hit, reveal up to 2 wind element cards from your memory and return them to your hand. So if you have Eminent Commander, and let's say you have 2 of them, if you pay 2 to play Lunge of Evoking Winds and swing with a polearm that is buffed by 1 power or whatever, or in the case of having this unit out, Huajiang, this thing will base come in for 3, which will trigger your Eminent Commander's ability. And on top of that, on hit, you reveal 2 wind element cards from your memory and return them to your hand. So the 2 cards you paid for this get returned. So in a sense, this card is effectively a 0 cost, deal X damage, where X is whatever buffs you have, whatever weapons you have, and whatever extra you have for this attack, which is, again, in terms of efficiency for damage, really good. Phalanx Captain, I will get into a little bit on that one. This is a bit of a tribal deck. We do go wide. Reclaim, Second Wind. We do want to wake up certain units sometimes. Because of the bonus that you get with Jin, it is until end of turn. So that means things like Rallied Advance are not as effective because we want to first swing with Jin, buff an ally, swing with the ally, and then wake the ally up. We can't do that with Rallied Advance because if we swing with Jin with Rallied, our ally didn't get the bonus just yet. So I think Second Wind is just a little bit better here. Veiling Breeze and Zephyr, just to kind of round out some of our tech choices. So this deck is a human tribal deck that is based on a little bit of anthems. One of the cards that I was thinking about was Inspiring Call. Sort of like what we had in the past where we would use our Attune with the Winds, which is also, you can play that card in here too. But that is why we have low cost, like in the case of Adept Swordmaster and Eminent Commander. That is why we have these lower, cheaper human allies, because once we get 2 or even 3 human allies out, Phalanx Captain costs 1 less for each. This card coming out for 2, like paying 2 for this, and then let's say you have another one in hand. Well, that next one costs 1 less, or it costs 1 total, and it's buffing your entire board. It is one of those cases where if your opponent does not have a Vanish from Sight that they played pre-rec, or they do not have a Resolute stand, they're going to eat dirt. So it's that's kind of the idea. This and ally decks in general operate on what I will refer to as pre-existing or consistent damage sources. When we look at where damage comes from and damage efficiencies and all that jazz, a lot of times people will focus on aggro cards that deal damage. In the case of like Blazing Throw, Demolition, and then in like Dao Chan's case, things like Cinder Geyser or Glowering Conflagration. A lot of those cards are a single instance of damage. You pay the reserve cost and it deals damage. And that's it. There's no funny business with it. It's just you're done. You lose that card as influence to deal the damage. So let me ask you, if I were to pay 3 for a Demolition, to deal 3 damage to a target unit, that gets around Taunt, gets around Intercept, gets around Stealth, it gets around a lot of things and can be played at fast speed. But if I told you you could pay 3 to play an ally that was, let's just compare it. We'll say it's a 3/3 or it has 3 attack. I think Blitz Mage would probably be the best example of this. If you could pay 3 for a Blitz Mage, that Blitz Mage does not have Summoning Sickness and you can hit something for 3. Now, Blitz Mage is not a fast speed. It is susceptible to certain types of removal. It is susceptible to Taunt and Intercept. And it is susceptible to Stealth, whereas obviously the spells are susceptible to Spell Shroud and allies are not susceptible to Spell Shroud. So both cost the same, both deal the same amount of damage. So it begs the question, why doesn't everyone just play Blitz Mage? Well, the reason is there's a lot more interaction with the allies, but the opportunity, or the upper, I guess, metronome. I guess we'll look at it like a metronome. The swings that you can get from a Blitz Mage is a lot higher and a lot lower than the swings that you can get from a Demolition. Because Demolition will always do what it says, and that's it, that's that. The best your opponent can do is play a card in response, which they would be going 1-for-1 in theory to block the damage. In the case of Blitz Mage, though, you're spending 3 to play a card that is more interactable, more preventable, again, in the case of intercepts and taunts. But if the Blitz Mage survives another turn, that Blitz Mage, without you paying anything, will do another 3 damage. And this will keep going on for each turn, which is why a lot of times fire aggro decks would, in the past, I think not so much now, but in the past would just go turn 1 Arthur. Because Arthur was a safe play, it was immortal, there wasn't really anything your opponent could do to interact with it. And then next turn, they could start beating your face in with it and turn after and turn after. So allies represent what we'll call pre-existing damage, and they're damage that we do not need to pay for beyond the initial investment or the opportunity or the costs for it. So a lot of allies, like in the case of Lurking, are usually 3-cost 2/3s. Now, as time goes on, we get more and more allies with more and more unique effects, like this one with True Sight. Sunsei is a 3-cost that's a 1/4 that buffs your weapon, and with Hwaji can swing with your weapon. So this card right here is a perfect example of allies that start to push a little bit more and more damage and become more imposing as this kind of pre-existing and ever-present damage each turn that you can turn them sideways. So Sunsei on enter, you buff the Hwaji with 1 durability, and Hwaji gets +1 attack, and you can swing with Hwaji with Sunsei. So Sunsei effectively becomes a 3-cost 3/4, which is really good. So rather than look at allies as a ally, as funny as it is to say that, think of them like sources or nodes. They are something that you can press a button, turn it sideways, click it, whatever you want to think about, that will repeatedly do damage every turn. It is important that we keep those alive And it is also important that our opponent interacts with them from their perspective, because a lot of times in these ally lists, if your opponent is not interacting with your board, they are getting swarmed by these nodes, these allies, these ever-present and pre-existing damages, which is also why fire aggro decks that play these instance-based or instant-based damage, one-time dealy things, they tend to run out of gas. So you can prevent a lot of their damage in some way. Maybe you're playing a Topsy Decree going 1-for-1 or whatever, and you can kind of slow the game down a little bit that you can get to your breakpoints on your level 3 champion and strategies. So they'll run out of gas more than an ally deck will, because again, this damage is coming every single turn. Now, the issue that allies have had recently, and by recent I mean for like the past year, is there is a lot of decks, archetypes, cards that really kind of put them down, and their only way to really close these games out was using gimmicks. Well, I say gimmicks, but things like Second Wind and Rallied Advance to wake up a super buffed ally, which again, very easily interactable. It is very difficult for an ally player to play that kind of like reach, where they go for those big numbers, against level 3 strategies that had something as simple as like a Zephyr, because now your super buffed ally is gone and they don't do anything with it. What you're seeing right now is, I think, the most extreme of that in the case of Wind Wake Up with the Ranger Strides, because they are all in on one ally, which is why some of them are running Coronation Ceremony to protect that ally. But if you play against the deck that can interact with that, that sucks a lot for them, because their metronome, to bring that example back, their swings are turn 2 kill if you don't have interaction, versus if you do have interaction, I basically lose the game because I'm all out of gas. Because they're not playing in a traditional fill the board with allies. They can, but their deck is not designed to do it. The deck is more tailored towards that all gas, no breaks. This list in front of you, this list is more tailored towards constantly flooding the board with allies each turn, possibly holding up some cards for interaction. But generally, we're going to be dumping as much of our hand and just going. So rather than all in on a combo line, we're going to be playing some resource efficient things, like playing a 4-cost 2/4 that wakes up at the end of the turn that also says our pole arms enter with +2. We're going to be playing a polearm attack that deals 4 damage for 2. We're going to be playing a polearm attack that at bare minimum, is 1 damage plus the 1 damage from Jin. So that's 2, and is float. So 2 damage minimum as a float, and is effectively a 0-cost card once we return our cards to our hand. Now, obviously, you can interact with you on hit, but let's just assume ideal world here. So we're playing these really efficient cards that we can play our allies and kind of swarm the board with, which is why also, like with Adept Swordmaster, we're buffing our weapons. We're buffing our Quadjis. We're buffing our polearms, so that when we play these attack cards that are already efficient, we're really capitalizing on already existing allies, which themselves are further facilitating cards like Eminent Commander to get him out with the buffs from that, or Phalanx Captain to act as a little bit of an anthem there. So all of this combined is what I always refer to as just pre-existing damage. It is ever present. It is something that is more reliable and will keep you going the distance when needed. There are a lot of times that I've watched allies that are more combo oriented fall flat on their face because they're so fixated on this combo or this super juiced ally, and you'll notice that their influence might go really low that turn for the combo, and if it gets interacted with, they're done. But if you play against the ally lists that are just dumping out ally after ally after ally, yes, they will lose to things like Resolute Stand and Vanish from Sight more so than the combo oriented, but they will be a little bit more reliable across the board. You no longer have to sweat when you lose a single ally. You now look at your board and say, okay, that's fine. I lost my one ally, but I've got two or three others over here that I can utilize all my other cards to buff them. Again, a la Jin. So hopefully this was a little bit of an exercise on just persistent damage, how to view allies and the different types of allies that you can play, combo, not combo, and comparing it a little bit to an aggro deck. Now, Allies, in my opinion, is not necessarily aggro. Allies is a little bit more what I would refer to as mid-range or tempo, because they do focus on controlling the board and going for, gradual damage increases until that last little bit where they maybe need a little oomph, which is where, a second win on a generic ally would come in. So that's today's little cram session. Play with this list. Try this list out. I think you guys will be really surprised on how good this list is. I really think you will be shocked with how good this card is. Lunge of Evoking Winds, Huazhong, and Leading Charge. Those cards are all really good, as well as my favorite Polearmed Steed. Bring out weapons. You're effectively playing Jin with Lorraine's on enter if you run into this guy. Tweak it to your liking. And like I said, have fun with it. I'll see you in the next one.